Hello and welcome to today's devotional. My name is Jack Heineke, and today's devotional, it's Proverbs Saturday. So this comes from the book of Proverbs, and this comes from Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 through 7. Trust in and rely confidently on the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight or understanding. In all your ways know and acknowledge and recognize Him, and He will make your path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that block your way. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord with reverent awe and obedience, and turn entirely away from evil. The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. G.K. Chesterton said that. Some years ago, I came home on Christmas Eve in the late afternoon. Some people there were trying to put together something for the last few hours for one of the kids. They were frustrated at getting nowhere. I looked around and asked, "Well, where are the instructions?" One of them replied, "I don't know. It's over there in the box somewhere." Is G.K. Chesterton right? That following the instructions of the Bible is too hard, so we haven't really given its many teachings a chance to impact our lives? Do we instead trust in our own hearts to determine the course of action or inaction to take in regards to what we believe? When God instructs us over and over not to worry, but we worry anyway, is that person following God's instructions or their own minds? Our minds have an obvious, powerful influence over us. Well, it's the only mind most of us have ever really listened to, since it's the only mind that we have. But is it the only mind that we have access to? Now, we can't hear the thoughts of anyone else's minds unless they communicate those thoughts. But even then, their actual thoughts aren't something that we can hear. All of our minds are closed off to one another. We can't make assumptions about what anyone else is thinking or feeling or planning. All of us know how to put on a mask to suit ourselves. We all know how to project in social settings the image we want to put out there. This sets up a sense of distrust in what people say until we determine that they are people of integrity who can be trusted, as they've shown themselves and proven themselves to be trustworthy. And this is true for all of us. You shouldn't trust me until I prove my trustworthiness to you, and that is determined by you, not me. So how do we actually trust God in what He has told us about Himself? Should this just be an exercise in blind faith, where just because God said it, I should trust it, without testing His trustworthiness first? How do I know I can trust God? The Bible tells us to test the spirits, which includes the Spirit of God. In order to trust someone, you have to get to know them. And the same holds true for God, and God knows this. So God will allow us to get to know Him through careful study of His character through His Word. But right away you can see the problem that this requires time, attention, and work. And that's obviously a tough, difficult thing for us to do, to find the time, to give it the focus and attention it needs, and the work that it does to actually find out. But there are also other ways of testing the Spirit of God, whether He's trustworthy or not, and that's through testing the Word through experience as well. So you can ask yourself an important question, and that question may lead you to a place of being able to trust God. The question is this: has God ever let you down? Now, this is an important and a loaded question, since most of us have suffered trauma and pain in life. Usually a lot more than just once. I've had that same question rolling around in my head, but the Christian culture that had surrounded me had just told me, well, just have faith anyway, and just ignore those questions. But God isn't interested in our culture as much as He is interested in us. God isn't threatened by these serious, difficult questions. He, in fact, desires that we come to Him with these questions. I've done this many times, and not once has God said, stop questioning this, just believe and shut up about that. Instead, he sits down and asks that he and I reason this out together. I was abused as a young child, and for years that question about God's love, care, and protection pertaining to my being abused rolled around in my mind until one day I took a risk and I asked him about this. And the question was, how could you let this happen to me if you love me as you say you do? God's answer was with a depth of pain that he had experienced over what had happened to me. God isn't a distant, uncaring, unloving God who doesn't care about us when we suffer. In fact, he suffers right along with us. And that's one of the things that he showed me. And then he showed me the cross. He showed me how that cross was necessary to save man from his sin. He showed me his heartbreak over the cross happening to his son, but that it was necessary to do this because it was the only way for salvation to occur. He showed me that he never meant for evil to enter into our existence, but he knew it would, and he had to make a plan on how to address and confront and defeat that evil. Because the cross is the only remedy for evil. The evil that was done to me and the evil within me also. He showed me how all of us, including myself, have sinned and have committed evil in the world. He also showed me how love cannot exist in a vacuum that demands that we love God back. That demanded love cannot be love at all. That in order to love, that we must have the choice not to love, but to hate instead. And this choice not to love, but to hate, is behind every evil act committed. God wants our love, but he cannot demand it. It is an act of free will to love or to hate. He allowed my abuse not because he wanted to, but because he gave the abuser free will to exercise, just as he gave all of us free will to exercise. But he also gave us a cross and an empty tomb to believe in, and that belief transforms us to become people who, through our trauma, can be of tremendous help to others who've been traumatized. Because through that cross and empty tomb has come some healing and peace of our trauma. As stated before, it's the only remedy to evil and trauma. God showed me that he will not change his plan even if it means more people will suffer trauma. Because his plan is the only way for traumatized people to be set free. If I look for some other way for him to do this, I can find no other way. I've tried and I run into nothing but fantastical dead ends. Not in reality, only in fantasy. God truly knows the best way for all of us. And his answers satisfied my question, because honesty always satisfies. And these and many other answers, and seeing how my life is played out, proves that he can be trusted. In fact, he is the only one I can trust completely. So trust in and rely on the Lord with all your heart. When you try to lean solely on your own understanding, you will fall, for our own understanding, our own insight, cannot bear the weight of our questions of our being. Every moment of every day is another opportunity to acknowledge him and to recognize him, and by doing so, he directs our feet to the best path possible for our lives. Does that mean no pain, no trauma? Of course not, for that is fantasy, not reality. Life and the Christian life is about suffering. Not every moment of it, but suffering happens to all of us. None of us are so special that we come out of life without some scars. The mature believers know this and don't expect not to suffer. The Bible, in fact, tells us that it's an honor to share in the sufferings of Christ. Now, I don't ever wake up asking for suffering today, but every time it's happened, God has always been there for me to cry to to lean into, to be ministered to by Him, to know Him in deeper and in greater loving ways. Do not believe the hype of your own wisdom, for any wisdom we possess was given to us by Him anyway. Do not let the flesh, the pride, and the ego get the attention it can never get enough of. Humble yourselves and know your place, because if we don't, God will pull the rug out from beneath us, not to humiliate us, but to put us back in our place, which is at His feet, not in His seat. So fear God with reverent awe, for He is awesome in more ways than we can know, and the ways that we do know are beyond awesome. And obey His instructions, for His way must be the best way to go. Because if it wasn't, He wouldn't be God now, would He? And never stop asking Him to help us to turn away from evil in the moment it rears its ugly head either outside of ourselves or within ourselves. Test Him with the hardest questions you can think of, for in all of these ways, for He will prove Himself trustworthy to be trusted. By doing so, you will prove to yourself that He alone can be trusted completely, and that Christianity is not found wanting at all. For you will have become someone with the experience of testing God in ways that bring Him honor and glory and bring you peace and healing. Now you will truly have something substantial to give to others.